20. So Howie Block, are you on, Howie?
I'm ready.
Okay, you're on, kiddo.
Thanks a lot.
And then Mr. Bowzer, John Bauman, will regale us into the sunset or the sunrise. Go ahead,
Thank you,
Howie.
Tom. Hello, everybody. You're all looking well. Mark, Joyce, etc. Let me go back. 1958, you're all around. A group out of Philadelphia called the Silhouettes record a song written by their lead singer, Billy Horton. It's because they're out of work. And they write a song. He writes a song called Get a Job. All of you remember that one?
Absolutely.
Okay. It's released in November of 1957. By December, it is #1 throughout the country. And if you remember that song, the group starts off with the immortal words, Sha Nana, Sha Nana, boom, boom, Sha Nana. Well, 12 years later, a group comes on TV called Sha Nana. And at first I thought they were making fun of doo-wop and rock and roll, but no, they were paying tribute to it. And in that group, you may remember, there was one guy who stood out more than anybody else. Wore a white t-shirt rolled up, hair slicked back. He rolled up his t-shirt, by the way, to show off his muscles. Anyway, his name was Bowzer. And Sha Nana was on the national scene for about 13 or 14 years, singing all the great songs from the 50s and the 60s. I had the pleasure of meeting Bowzer in Philadelphia 4 years ago at a Hillary Clinton campaign stop.
Yes, many of us were there.
Yeah. And I was shocked in a way to see he sits down at the piano, and the next thing I know, he's not playing rock and roll. He's playing Chopin's Etude in A major, a classical piano piece that was played brilliantly. Because Bowzer is really John Bauman, a proud graduate, by the way, of Junior High School 109 in Queens and Martin Van Buren High School. Well, take off the Bowzer character, and he is now the president of the Social Security Works PAC and the Florida Democratic Party Organizing Council. So he has been busy at work for the candidates such as Joe Biden and before that Hillary. It is my extreme pleasure to introduce to you and have him sing a new song, John Bowzer Bauman.
Thank you, Howie. My message is that on the night of November 3rd, 2020, Joe Biden has got to be doing this. I believe that I have been making a living now for over 50 years doing this. God bless America. And yes, just like Howie said, you know I love the music of the 50s and the early 60s. But that does not mean that I actually want to return to the 50s and the early 60s. Because I do not want to return to a time before Medicare, when over 35% of American seniors had incomes below the poverty line. And I certainly don't want to return to a time before Social Security was passed in 1935, when, just think about this, more than 50%, over 1 out of every 2 American seniors had incomes below the poverty line. Social Security and Medicare are the 2 most successful domestic programs in the entire history of the United States of America, and we need to keep them that way. In fact, we need to expand them. So that is why I've taken on this responsibility, completely unpaid, of being president of Social Security Works PAC. In 2018, when it was all about flipping the house, if we hadn't flipped the house in 2018, we wouldn't even have a country by now. So in 2018, I traveled from Alaska to South Florida and from northern Maine to Southern California, endorsing candidates who are going to be with us on senior issues. But if 2018 was about the House, 2020 is about the White House. and it's about the Senate. It's about implementing Joe Biden's outstanding plan for older Americans. And I really do ask all of you to go to Joe Biden's website and look at Joe Biden's plan for all older Americans. 2020 is all about making calls into battleground states like Florida, where along with Chief Steve Regenstripe, who's on this call, we put together something, it's hard to believe, but seniors in Florida have never really been organized. A few months ago, we put together something called the Florida Democratic Seniors Organizing Council. It's a body of over 200 of the best influencers, activists, organizers in the entire state of Florida. It covers 97% of the state. People like Ken Goodfriend are on it, Stuart Cohen's on it, Lynn Winterbaum's on it, Denisa Jackson's on it, all from UFT. And it's working. It's working. We are the go-to organization for the Biden campaign when it comes to senior issues. And I do this all because it's clear to me, and I've been waiting to say this to you, I hope everybody stays on this call. It's clear to me from all the critical thinking skills that I learned in the New York City public schools, the critical thinking skills I learned at PS 188, beginning in first grade with Mrs. Lazarus, in second grade with Mrs. Lash, in third grade with Barbara Oshman Friedman, in fourth grade with Miss Barzay, in fifth grade with Francis Friedman, in sixth grade with Rose Warhoftig, because you see, at the age of 73, I still remember every single one of my elementary school teachers. And then at PS 109, and then at Martin Van Buren High School, it's clear to me from the critical thinking skills that I learned in the New York City public schools that then ultimately gave me entry to Columbia University, from which I graduated magna cum laude. But those critical thinking skills all have told me that our beloved country is in real trouble right now. We're on the road to tyranny under a pathologically lying, malignant narcissist. 200,000 of us dead from COVID-19 with still no federal plan to deal with the pandemic. No plan to deal with the raging endemic racism that I learned to fight during National Brotherhood Week in second grade at PS 188. And we now, in the area that I work in every day, we live under a threat to, according to Donald Trump, terminate Social Security, terminate the dedicated funding in another Trump term. And I live with wildfires everywhere around me, fanned by climate change as I speak to you from California, where I never would have moved from New York, but we had to come out here to tape the Sha Nana television show in the late 70s. And it's also clear to me, with my critical thinking skills developed in the New York City public schools, that now we have the imminent threat of a second Supreme Court seat theft, an absolutely mind-numbing display of hypocrisy about apparently to be put on by Republicans in the Senate. What have we become? So it's imperative that we win in November. If 2008 was yes, we can, and I worked on that campaign, every campaign in Florida for months at a time. I've gone to Florida except for this one where I don't suppose I'm going to be able to travel. But every campaign I've spent, presidential campaign, since '04, I've spent months at a time in Florida. 2008, the most exciting of them all so far, was yes, we can. This is yes, we must. Yes, we must. So I ask you to help us. Contact me, call into Florida, but now I'm going to change the tone a little bit. You know that I love the music of the 50s and the early 60s. And I call that the classical music of rock and roll. But like Howie said, I didn't even start out in rock and roll. I actually started out in real classical music, playing music that sounded like this. And yes, I started started playing piano when I was 7 years old. I attended the Juilliard School of Music in the city of New York, beginning at age 12. So there's a story that goes along with this, and I'm going to be Bowzer for a minute. If you're a little kid and you're learning how to play classical music, especially in New York City, where do you want to grow up one day to perform? That's right, the UFT Retirees Chapter Meeting. Well, maybe it really was Carnegie Hall. So the year was 1970.
Yeah.
Carnegie Hall, in desperate financial trouble, turns to rock and roll. And who should be invited to perform at the fabled, the legendary Carnegie Hall but my old group, Sha Nana. So there we are, Sha Nana on stage at Carnegie Hall. And in the third row of the audience was the only person standing in the entire audience of Carnegie Hall, my mother, Bessie Bauman, the woman who forced me to practice. And she stood proudly in Carnegie Hall while her son sang Rama Lama Ding Dong. And she waved and she shouted, Jonathan, because that's my real name that only she ever called me. Jonathan, you made it. Because to your mother, whether it was Chopin's Minute Waltz or Rama Lama Ding Dong, Carnegie Hall was Carnegie Hall. And then when the show was over, she went out to the merchandising table and she started signing autographs, Bowzer's mother. So in her honor, because she did force me to practice, and for that I thank her still today, I'm going to play for you my mother's favorite melody, the Chopin Etude in E major. Because that's the personal reason why I'm here with you today. My mom was a public school librarian at PS 45 in Brooklyn, New York. Like a lot of women of her generation, she went back to school later in life. She got a master's degree at Queens College in library science. And she went to work at PS 45 when she was in her 50s. I can tell you firsthand that when she retired, it was her Social Security and that new program, Medicare, that allowed her to live a life of dignity and independence that were completely unknown to my grandparents. And that's the personal reason why I'm here with you today. And that's the personal reason why I'm doing all this work on senior issues and urge everyone in America to bum 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 dang 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 ding dong ding, vote for Joe Biden. Now, this is something you're a little bit more used to hearing from me. You know it as "Good night, sweetheart." Well, it's time to go as we reach the end of our program. But today we're going to change the words a little bit. You can all sing along with me. I'm sure you'll catch on pretty quick. Do, 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 do. Good night, Donald Trump. Well, it's time to go. Do, 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 do. Good night, Donald Trump. Well, it's time to go. Do, 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 do. Don't hate to leave you, but we really must say good night, Donald Trump. Good night. Do, 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 do. Good night, Donald Trump. Good night. Do, 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 do. Good night, Donald Trump. Vote for Joe Biden. It's on the night of November 3rd. Joe Biden's got to be doing this.
Great, great.
John, thank you so much. I mean, you really sang us into a finale, and we're going to have those words with us, hopefully, beyond November 3rd. And the work you do is unbelievable, you and Steve and everybody else involved. So we truly appreciate it. And thank you all for staying with us. This has been a great, great meeting. And we'll see you October 20th, and we'll get information out on how to participate. I want to thank everybody who made presentations and the good memories we have of those who we've lost. So thank you very much, and we'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.